Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Horror Movies for Life YouTube channel. So the 1982 horror film that we're going to take a look at today is one that I streamed on YouTube. Do not have the physical medium for, and that movie is Humongous from 1982, Canadian slasher film. So let's just go ahead and get into it. So Humongous is a 1982 Canadian slasher film directed by Paul Lynch, who also directed Prom Night from a couple years earlier, which I liked that as a slasher. Um, the story centers on a group of young adults who become stranded on a deserted island where they are stalked and murdered by a monstrous assailant. Sounds simple enough. So the movie opens with a prologue. During Labor Day weekend in 1946, young Ida Parsons is chased into the woods and raped by a house guest. Her dogs break out of their pen and attack and kill Ida's rapist. In 1982, brothers Eric and Nick borrow their family's yacht to take their girlfriends, Sandy and Donna, and their sister Carla on a weekend outing to St. Martin Island. That night, Eric and Nick discover and rescue a shipwrecked fisherman named Bert. Bert was wrecked offshore Dog Island, the home of lumber baroness Ida Parsons, who has used her family fortune to hold herself up on the island for the past 35 years, only making two annual voyages to the mainland for supplies and never speaking to anyone. Recovering from the onset of hypothermia, Bert tells a campfire story about the wild dogs which roam Ida's island, acting as her sentries. Sentries, yeah. So yeah, that's to set up the premise, the beginning of how humongous. As far as the cast goes, we have Janet Julian as Sandy Ralston, David Wallace as Eric Simmons, John Wildman as Nick Simmons, Janet Baldwin as Carla Simmons, Jeanette Baldwin, I should say, as Carla Simmons, Joy Bolshell as Donna Blake, and Lane Coleman as Bert Defoe. So yeah, that's to set up the premise and the cast for the 1982 Canadian slasher film Humongous. Um, this is a pretty run-of-the-mill slasher film, I would say, especially for this time, early 80s. Um, it's kind of the middle of the road. But let's just go ahead and get into it, starting with the things that I like about Humongous. And I do like the outdoor island setting. I think it's pretty cool and somewhat unique. It adds to the overall atmosphere that the movie has. And ultimately, it's a nice background for a slasher movie. I mean, yeah, you still have woods on this island, but the fact that it's on an island means you have that isolation factor where a set of characters are, they can't go to the police. They can't really get anybody's attention from this island. So they're stuck there to survive. And that always adds a little bit of an extra element. You don't have to work, you don't have those cops showing up trying to investigate and accusing the wrong person of the wrong crimes and not believing the people that are experiencing the murders and things like that. So I kind of like that aspect for a change, to be honest with you. So yeah, the setting I liked. There are some good shadow silhouettes of the killer, especially towards the end of the movie, that were I thought were effective during the chase and stalking scenes that we see. Initially, the killer, you see the POV shot from his eyes. Um, but then ultimately, the second half of the movie, once some people have been murdered and stuff, then we start to, especially when our final girl of Sandy, our final survivor, is being stalked and chased by the killer. We get some nice silhouettes of this big, humongous, as it were, as the title would suggest. That I thought were pretty well done, to be honest with you, for a low budget movie like this. So, the story I think is kind of interesting with the prologue setting things up, just like a lot of early 80s slasher movies tend to do. You always have that initial scene, like Prom Night had the same thing when they're kids and stuff, and to set up the slasher movie ultimately. And so this movie definitely has that. It's pretty straightforward but effective, and I think it fits in with the other early 80s slasher movies during this time. Um, I thought the final girl of Sandy, played by Janet Julian, I thought she was a resourceful and just a little bit smarter than the other friends and characters in the movie that she has. Enough to survive, obviously. Pretty easy on the eyes, too, I have to say. She's a very beautiful young woman in this movie. Um, kind of hard to take your eyes off of, honestly. And then my final pros is I thought the direction and the pacing of this movie overall was solid. It's about a 94-minute movie, and well, there's a couple scenes that they could have tightened up a little bit and had a little bit more action involved in the movie. I wasn't checking my phone or anything like that, so I think it's a pretty well paced and therefore directed movie by Paul Lynch. Just as he did a good job directing Prom Night. I do like Prom Night a bit more than this movie, but I can tell it was kind of the same director during this time. So, as far as cons go, I'm just going to echo what a lot of people have said about this movie. You can't really see anything, especially when things are taking place at night. It's very hard to see anything going on during the nighttime scenes because of poor lighting. And I realize that it's a low budget movie, but I don't know other low budget movies I've watched. They've still been able to have enough lighting so that you can actually see something. I don't know if they did that intentionally because they didn't want to have the makeup effects and the overall effects of showing this humongous killer, as well as some of like the gore scenes and the gore effects and things like that. I don't know if they did it intentional from that regard or if they just didn't have the money for more lighting, but it definitely lacked enough lights to allow the viewer to see exactly what was happening. But I think that's the biggest knock on this movie is you just can't see anything on this island at nighttime, and a lot of it takes place during nighttime. There are some daytime scenes as well, but I would say it's like 65-35 minimum as far as night scenes over day scenes. So yeah, it would have been nice to have an extra light or two. Um, you know, you still could have had the silhouettes of Humongous and stuff and made that work. But you know, as a viewer, you kind of want to see what's going on a little bit in a slasher movie. The characters, well, typical and cliche. Some are likable, like Sandy and Eric, and some are not, like Nick, mostly just Nick, if I'm being honest with you. Maybe a little bit of Carla, but mostly Nick. Um, but somehow, my biggest gripe with the characters, they're somehow able to piece together exactly what is going on and what happened without any convincing or connecting evidence to that. I know they find a diary or a journal, if you will. Um, what's going on with the lighting there? But that doesn't give away as much as they're able to come up with. Basically, their exposition communicating to the audience, um, so that nobody's confused. But they're able to just figure things out without any sort of um, any way to be able to do it, frankly. And that really kind of annoyed me. And I realize you have to suspend disbelief with a lot of these slasher movies, especially from the early '80s, but it's not believable and it really does strain any logic or common sense in the movie. The fact that they would just be able to, by seeing a word or seeing a page, oh, this must have happened, and that means this happened. And they're basically explaining to the audience the big twist, if you want to say, even though it's not a big twist. There's not really a twist in this movie. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a very lazy and unrealistic way to communicate exposition to the audience. And so that was something that really stuck out to me as a negative. The kills are not really seen all that well, with the exception of two. There's one at the beginning having to do with dogs. That was pretty gory, probably the best kill of the movie, frankly. And then there's another one towards the end of the movie, the last character that's killed, where their head is being squeezed. You know, like a Jason from Friday the 13th, and you see some blood and some things with the eyes there. Not as effective as Friday the 13th in that regard. But other than that, the characters are mostly off screen and they're really not that memorable or gory as far as being seen on screen. So that was a bit of a disappointment as a slasher movie goes. Um, Kind of wanted some more action or things to happen throughout the movie. It's just sort of a predictable and underwhelming slasher movie plot overall. Nothing really stands out about this movie other than the setting to a certain extent. Like I said, being shipwrecked on this island and the isolation and everything that goes along with that. But otherwise, it's pretty standard. It's not too high or too low. Um, there is a little bit of nudity in the movie. There a little bit at the beginning as we get into our rape scene, which is not nudity that I really want to relive because I'm not a big fan of SA or R. I've already said the word, but you know what I mean. That scene was a little bit difficult to watch, although they didn't show it too long or too much, but still not my favorite. But then there's nudity where that actually makes a bit of sense. It isn't just a girl going into the shower. She actually like removes her top in order to somebody has hypothermia, another character. So she basically opens up her shirt and lays on top of that character using her like the warmth from her body and her breasts to that we see to warm up this other character. So that kind of made some sense. Normally they just whip them out for no reason because it's a sex scene or they're taking a shower and we need to see that or something. But just something I wanted to add. But the premise and what they go for here, well, interesting, doesn't really land. I don't think it's as executed as well as it could have been. But I'm also not going to rip this movie overly that much either because I think it does kind of fit in with a lot of the early 80s low budget slashers from this time. I could watch this movie again. I'm not going to pay a ton of money to add it to my collection. It looks like you have to right now because apparently it must have been released years ago and it's out of print now. I'm guessing just from what I've seen on Facebook and stuff. But I'm going to give Humongous a 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10 for Humongous, the Canadian slasher from 1982. Go ahead and comment down below if you guys have seen this movie, what your thoughts are on it. Do you like it as a slasher movie? Do you not? Why or why not? Comment down below. Please like this video, hit the little notification bell, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. It would really help me out in regards to the future content on my channel. So, with all that being said, thank you for watching. We are in September now, and I've got a ton of movies to go through before we get to the great month of October, of course, which I'll be going through the entire Halloween franchise again, taking a little break from the 1980s series here, but we'll dive back into it in November. So, with that being said, thank you for watching, and as always, stay scared. Bye.